very often we talk, well, pretty much gambling all the time. I think we have gambled on sunrise and sunset. I think we have gambled on popes. I think that we have
that's fair. Yeah.
wagered on the time of people's births. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying that it's a lifestyle that we have chosen. And why be so hard on us? Why poke at us? Why can't you let us be? Why can't you just let us live? And for that, we certainly were pretty excited the way that it seems to be going in this country as it comes to what they call single event sports betting. We assume it's going to become legal. It's been the talk, and you've certainly seen what's happened south of the border. So for the first time, we go to Dan Ralph from the Canadian Press. A really cool article that he wrote the other day. We say good morning to Dan. Hey, Dan.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Now, I think, is this the first time that you've been on our show?
Yes, sir.
That's outrageous.
Especially since you're a CFL guy,
and a
too.
CFL guy.
A
Sometimes
Woodbine CFL guy. Come on, you should be on every day.
You guys kill me already.
Absolutely. Now, so for people who aren't familiar with what we're talking about when it comes, because it's actually tied in very politically, right, to the last fall federal election. So when we start talking about single event betting, explain to the people listening here today what the difference is between that and what, even those that would still continue to play pro line or online betting. What is the difference, Dan?
Well, right now in Canada, you cannot bet on a sports event, single sports event. Like if you wanted to bet on the Super Bowl, for example, you cannot bet just on that game. You have to parlay it into three selections. Like if you want to bet on use pro line, you have to use what they have, and you bet on three games, and you have to get all three right in order to win. South of the border, if you want to bet, for example, on the Super Bowl, then you can. And and Michigan's going to be the talk is Michigan's going to adopt single event sports wagering in time for the NCAA men's basketball tournament.
Oh,
so you could bet on whatever game you wanted to, and that one entity, or you could bet on as many as you want. In Canada, we can't bet on single events. We can bet on horses, we can bet on pro line or what have you, but we cannot bet on single event sports events.
So if you were to go, currently right now as it stands, I could go down to the casino in Detroit, in
Greektown.
In Greektown.
Yep.
And buy March Madness possibly.
Yes. Or you could go to Western New York. There's a casino, I believe, in West Seneca. I don't gamble, so I'm woefully inept in telling you exactly where to go. But from what I've been told, there are casinos in Western New York, and there is one in Detroit. Yes, and if you want during March Madness, you can go down there and bet on games. Now, the problem that people in Canada are concerned about is that if Canadians go across the border to partake in single event sports wagering, and get into that habit, then if and when it becomes legal in Canada, it's tougher to get those people to stay home. So they take their money and go across the border, and you don't get that money in Canada.
Now, how does this affect, because, for most people in the GTA, and Canada for that part, when you start talking about Woodbine, very often the first thing is the ponies. You think of the horses. Now, in terms of what they want to do, because it's been, under siege, in trying to keep what is just a gorgeous sport, like a real, sport of kings, you call it what you will. Does this impact, horse racing as a whole and its ability to stay at Woodbine to the position that it currently holds? Does this affect that?
Well, it's funny because I spoke with a gentleman who runs a Meadowlands racetrack in New Jersey, and they have single event sports wagering. They handle the sports book there as well, and they say that if you just have a horse track based on wagering on horse races, then chances are that track is losing money right now. But if you have single event sports wagering there, and you can handle and you also partake in that handle, then you obviously supplement your income, and all of a sudden a losing venture becomes a more profitable venture. So I think the folks at Woodbine, they're doing okay, but Jim Lawson, who's the CEO of Woodbine, is trying to not only keep what he has, but also set up a situation where he can start looking at maybe investing in some long-term growth in the sport. by allowing Woodbine to also get involved in sports handles and handling that. And I mean, they have that. They have the expertise to do that. They do it with single event, sports wagering right now. They're the only one in Canada. It's like they allow you to bet on horses, but they also lease an area for the operation of a casino in Woodbine. So they have the people, they have the expertise, they have the relationship with regulators already, so that they feel that if single event sports wagering ever became legal in Canada, then they could hit the ground running and get it going.
And it does two things as well when you start talking about that ability at Woodbine to do that. Number one, the number of jobs that in that industry. I mean, you're talking 30, 40,000 jobs exactly. That you can spread across the country. Now, if you can protect some of that, I think that's very important for the life of what I think is an important institution when it comes to horse racing in this country, especially at Woodbine. The other thing, because Woodbine is nonprofit and that's the mandate, the other companies, I mean, they can do certain things the others can't because they have shareholders and they're public companies. They can't do that, but Woodbine can.
Exactly. And that's the other thing too, Mike, is that they're set up to be able to handle this ethically and efficiently and professionally. And Jim's also makes it very, very clear that this is not horse racing coming to the situation with hat in hand.
Right.
That's not what they're looking for because of because of what you said. They don't have to appease shareholders. They're not a publicly traded entity. They're private, and they don't have to go by the same mandates that other companies do. And I think that's the other thing that the other point that they're making too is that we can do things that other companies cannot. And so I mean, I think they're situated very, very well. It's just a matter of if and when the Liberal government decides to make this legal.
We're in conversation with Dan Rell from the Canadian Press, joining us here on Raw. Mike Richards. Dan, let's just rewind this for a second. So, because of what's happening in Michigan, and you mentioned, this could be happening by March Madness, would obviously be a major sporting event of the season. Some people that I've talked to in Vegas say that March Madness is even bigger than the Super Bowl as far as gaming is concerned. Do you think the Canadian government feels any additional pressure, considering that Michigan is just over the Ontario border, that it better come to Canada a little faster just because of all the loss that the country could take? And also, you're talking about some of the underground activity that the government obviously would like to get their hands on as well. Do you think there's any pressure to maybe speed this up to the right speed that it actually should be taken? Like, in my opinion, Dan, I think this should have happened a couple of years ago. It hasn't. But do you think the government's looking at it that point of view just because of what's happening just over the border?
Well, I mean, I hope so. I mean, if the estimates are accurate, you're talking about $10 to $12 billion in money that underground economy generates.
Yep.
And in my mind, that's $10 to $12 billion that the government could tax and get a piece of, and help the economy in Canada and other areas of life that could benefit from that money right now. I mean, everything you look at, we're in a situation where we're cutting back. We're always doing cutbacks, and I mean, if you have access to this amount of money, and you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in potential tax revenue, or even billions, I mean, why the heck not? Regulate it, control it, make sure it's good, make sure it's professional, make sure that there are things in place to ensure growth. And benefit from it. I mean, I like I said, I'm not a wagerer. I'm the most small time wagerer you're going to find, but it makes perfect sense to me. And and if you want, you want to offer programs, then we need to fund programs. And this, to me, is I don't want to say found money, but you know what I mean. Like this is another avenue, like another avenue for programs. And why the heck not?
By the way, when it comes to small-time wagering, you are talking to the king. You would not believe what I can squeeze out of $1.78. Whatever that minuscule amount of money is, Dave can attest to the fact that I make more out of $1 than anybody else that he knows. And look, maybe I'm glad that single event wagering wasn't available on last year's Grey Cup, because you're talking to, well, this host who's a longtime Hamilton Tiger Cat fan, and on the other side, a Winnipegger.
Yeah. Bomber versus Tiger Cat fan right here in the studio, Dan.
There you go.
and it was not smiles on this side, but because you also covered the CFL as well, correct?
Correct.
Now, how long? Now it's time to let's meet Dan. How long you been with CP?
This is my 30th year, believe it or not.
30th?
This is 3-0. Time flies when you're having fun.
No kidding.
Oh, you must have stolen a lot of stuff from that office. Let's be honest.
Yeah, 30 years. It just ended. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much for joining this morning.
My pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Please don't be a stranger.
Really, you know what? We'll do that. Look, we'll do this again. And look, as this gets closer, I know it's something that you follow for CP, and it's you know, you're able to relate to what happens here at Woodbine, which is of extreme importance. And you know, considering the nature in which they have gone about growing what happens in that facility. I mean, they have like 1,000 acres. They're possibly going to build like what could be the second biggest casino in North America. It will be like a small city and a real destination. Not that it wasn't. I mean, we got the Queen's Plate.
Even more so now.
But,
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I still remember. I mean, the fact that horse racing is still going is a testament, because I mean, in 2012, the Liberal government ended the slots at racetrack machine program, and that was over $300 million that generated for horse racing. So they've really had to be, you know, reinvent themselves, and you know, kudos to them. And I'm with you. I kind of hope that this works out for them, because I kind of like horse racing. I think it's a terrific sport, and anything to enhance it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Dan, we will definitely talk to you again. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Have a great day.
That is Dan Ralph from the Canadian Press. Did a really nice job, and I think they explained very well, you know, basically what we talk about and have been talking about for some time. Even Tim Hudak, that was a big thing for him.
That was.
On his platform. Tim has been talking about this because, not necessarily that he's, not that I'm aware of, some huge gambler, but as Dan just pointed out, 12 was it $12 billion?
Yep.
You don't
10 to $12 billion.
The government doesn't want to get their hands on that, and if it goes the route of our friends at Woodbine,
Well, that's the thing,
because
right?
they're a private company, they're not, you know, they don't have shareholders. They're able to put monies back in, and as you know, when you have that kind of money that comes in, they, depending on how it's structured, and because they're ethical people down there, that's why Woodbine is Woodbine. Monies can go back to support the horse racing industry, support the $30,000 to $40,000 or sorry, 35 employees, and then on top of that, you got sports programs, you got children's programs. I mean, there's no stopping where that money could go back into. Should it go that way, it all makes sense. I don't see how it doesn't.
It does, and I think it's just a matter of time. But you know what? We keep on monitoring that situation, and if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be Jim Lawson and Woodbine Entertainment. So we look forward to that.
And great for Dan meeting him for the first time.
And by the way, next time we have Dan Ralph on, we should have talked to him about Zach Caleros signing a 2-year contract extension with the Grey Cup champion Winnipeg Blue Bombers.